was my first film, and don't ask me why. I got more rehearsal time than I've ever gotten in any other film. And what we did is we did a table read, and then we started to break it down scene by scene. And then we started to define the characters. And then we started to find the funny moments, believe it or not. And you rehearse and you find out what's there. You know, and so it was blocked out. I finally went to a sound stage and I had all the sets were there, and I had it sketched out on the floor in white tape, and we ran the whole thing through. And I had Colin Higgins down. And Colin Higgins then was a very, very hot Hollywood director. And the Columbia wanted to know that there was somebody backing me up. And it worked like a play. Fright Night carried on its own, and we did it all the way through. And you could see it and feel it working. And once we started to shoot, because we rehearsed it, I hardly had to say anything.
There were very few rewrites either. I don't remember any rewrites at all. It was just sort of what was on the page is what we did. And, yeah, we played like a play.
I want to ask you, Tom, about I know you've got something at your table, the comic book that you are now, it's like a new comic book about adventures, like Peter Vincent adventures.
Right.
What was the approach there?
There was a Fright Night comic in the early 90s that was successful, and then after about 2.5 years it went away. And people kept asking me about it, so we're relaunching it. And I have the first comic book, the first edition at my table. And if any of you are around tomorrow, please come and take a look. And I mean, so I'm trying to launch, this is, you know, well, it's the Peter Vincent Chronicles. Because, I mean, if you listen to people, Peter Vincent is Bengali, except he can fight back, you know, and it seems that that people want to know more about everybody, but especially Peter Vincent. So, you know, so the comic book does that, and it's set up. So as the adventures go along, the next one he's going to call Charlie in for Help.
I have a question for Steve. The makeup effects, the look of the vampires and the creatures in the movie is so unique, and it was something that came out of nowhere. The vampires didn't look like that until Fright Night. Where did the designs come from in your head? And because they're just so unique and so amazing. Tell me a little bit about how you thought of the look of the vampires.
Completely, you have to give credit to Tom for this, because I was completely against it. Because I said, Tom, how are you? No, werewolves transform. Vampires don't transform. They grow fangs. And Tom's like, no, we could do it. I'm like, they haven't done this since Nosferatu, and I didn't think the audiences would buy it. So it came from Tom. It's his fault.
I inherited the best effects team in Hollywood at that moment. These guys came over literally from Ghostbusters. So they went from one of the most expensive movies made that year in Hollywood to one of the least expensive. But they still brought the talent with them.
Speaking about the effects, for those of you who actually had to undergo the effects.
If you start talking about those contact lenses,
I didn't bring up the contacts.
I'm sorry, what?
I didn't bring up the contacts.
Contact lenses?
The contacts are a little controversial, but I wanted to ask for, you know, Amanda, you had a pretty...
Contact lenses?
That's it? That's enough?
I guess we're talking about contact lenses. But you guys, I mean, you know, all three of you had some pretty audacious transformations in this movie. Maybe with contact lenses, maybe without. Can you guys talk about that process for you? Because I'm guessing this is not something you guys had encountered before this film.
No, certainly not. And nor did I wear glasses or contact lenses prior to making Fright Night. Now, I have no comparison to what Stephen went through, because that 18-hour transformation was beyond belief. And Tom tells this story better than I can, but the moment where I reveal that mouth was a last-minute decision. However, the transformation for Amy throughout was very subtle, and I loved it because it was subtle. And I started with this little sexy baby pair of fangs, and one set of lenses, and then they grew, and then the lenses, and then they grew, and then the lenses. So not being used to contact lenses, you know, when they put them in, it was alien, it was weird, and you could hardly see anything, but you know, I could make it through. And then this one time they were put in, and I was just, oh my goodness,
This is not a true story, by the way.
This is a true story. And it was just, what's happening? And I didn't want to squeak the wheel. We're getting ready to shoot. There's so many things going on. And then all of a sudden I was just, hello, hello. And they pulled them out, and what happened was, in their haste, they had forgotten to sand the back of the paint of the lens. Thank
Urban
God
legend.
my eyes survived contact lenses. Anyway, but that was the least of it. When I was in my full makeup, it was about 6 hours in the chair. And I think Chris was what, 8, 10, 8? Okay.
He was so fed up with it, he started helping do the
No,
his
he
own
did his
makeup.
fingers. Yes, I remember that. But Tom, tell a little bit about the story with the shark.
I was blocking the scene on the set, and we were going to shoot the following Monday, I think.
No, it was the very next day.
Oh, the very next day. Oh, very next day. I didn't give me any time at all. Anyway, so it's she and Billy are talking at the bottom of the stairs, and she turns away. She says, "Billy, you promised Charlie, you promised you'd protect me." And she turns away, and he's feeling terribly guilty. And he takes a step forward, and then she came back and she looked just like she did. And I'm looking at it, I thought, there's a huge screen there. And don't ask me how I know this kind of stuff, but I did. And so I went to Steve, who's a genius, by the way, and I said, "Can you give me a mount for tomorrow?"
And I said no.
And, and I said, "I don't care how bad it is, give me the mouth," because I knew the cut was going to work. And so he threw together the shark mouth. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how she wore it. And he was very uncertain about the quality, to put it mildly. And it ends up being one of the most, if not the most famous image from the movie, and on the one sheet.
Tom, what you said was, "Don't worry about it, Steve. Nobody will even remember it."
I have a question for the cast that's up here. Were you guys horror film fans before you made Fright Night? And are you horror film fans now? And what are some of your favorites?
My favorite horror movie is Fright Night.
I haven't seen that one. I have to check that out. I grew up, as a horror fan. I used to read Eerie magazine and Creepy magazine. And my dad was a pharmacist. He got into the pharmacy. I grew up watching Night Gallery, Twilight Zone, and The Exorcist. I snuck in and saw, and I like creepy, spooky, not always seeing things, or kind of more my forte for enjoyment. But yeah, The Changeling.
Yeah, I know I'm gonna be hated by most of the audience, but you know, like the Friday the 13th stuff, and I like movies that have suspense, you know, and the element of surprise. I love Alfred Hitchcock, and Tom incorporated those elements into this film like crazy. And when I first saw the movie in a theater, I had no idea about, you know, I was just blown away. I mean, the whole audience is, you know, but that's the kind of horror movies I like. I mean, like The Exorcist, The Birds, and that type of thing.
I was like, I've been a horror fan forever. I got all the horror magazines, and I had all the models. Remember the Aurora models? I do those, and my mother would buy me fighter jets. And she'd go, "Don't you want to put this together?" No, I like Dracula. But I think my favorite horror movie of all time is the 1963 adaptation of The Haunting. It's amazing. It's an amazing film, and I've always loved that film.
Why even bother asking me? I came out of the womb loving this stuff.
Okay. All right, so we're going to open it up to you guys now. So, and I'm going to be out here with the mic, so raise your hand. You guys can ask these guys questions right in the front row. Keep your questions ready and raise your hands when I get over to you.
What was it like in this movie? I mean, there was a lot of innocence in the movie, and you don't see a lot of movies like that nowadays, you know. And yeah, I love movies, and